For this project, I've decided to tour the Museum of Modern Art located in New York virtually. The experience was interesting to say the least. I have chosen two pieces of artwork from that tour that are from the 19th century. The two that I've chosen stood out to me for both their differences, but yet also some of their similarities. I'll begin with the first painting that grabbed my attention. This is a post-impressionist oil on canvas painting called The Channel at Gravelines Evening. This is by Georges Pierre Seurat and was painted in 1890. This French artist was born on December 2nd, 1859 in Paris and died at the age of 31, also in Paris. He was born to a wealthy family that consisted of his 44-year-old property owner father and a Parisian. Their home had a garden, and that's where young Seurat began to paint. He had an older brother and sister and primarily lived with his mother in Paris since his father was for the most part in Lorenzi for work as a bailiff. Seurat first studied art with a sculptor named Justin Lequin. While in school, Seurat had an incredible life-changing experience according to his bio in Britannica.com, where it states that in the school library, Seurat discovered a book that was to inspire him for the rest of his life, titled Essay on the Unmistakable Signs of Art by Humbert de Superville, a painter and engraver from Geneva. It dealt with the future course of aesthetics and with the relationship between lines and images. Though his life was short compared to today's standards, the impact that he made during his artistic life is incredible. Seurat, according to Britannica.com, was the founder of the 19th century French school of Neo-Impressionism, whose technique for portraying the play of light using tiny brushstrokes of contrasting colors became known as pointillism. This style of painting consists of small detached strokes of only color that are too small to be distinguished. But when you look at the overall painting, those strokes give the painting shimmer. In other words, he would apply the dots of color so that from a distance they would blend together. As you can see from this 25 by 32 inch landscape painting, Seurat really used the pointillist style to create the rosy glow of the image. Seurat had special thoughts on color. According to thoughtco.com, he subscribed to the idea of a scientific approach to painting with color, that there was a natural law to the way colors work together to evoke emotion in art, similar to how musical tones work together in harmony or dissonance. Seurat believed that he could create a new artistic language using perception, color, and lines. He called this theoretical visual language chromoluminism. Today, it's included under the term divisionism, referring to how the technique requires the eye to combine adjacent colors rather than the artist mixing pigments before painting. His pointillistic style creates almost a fog-like vision in this artwork where you can't see clearly, yet the boat, the sails, and the anchors are still well defined. His use of color reflects using reds, oranges, greens is outstanding, especially if you zoom in and you get up close to see how and where he placed each color dot. His use of primary colors is most visible in the sandy shore at the bottom of this painting. This is where you can really differentiate and see the dots clearly compared to the depth perception that is represented towards the middle of the painting where the break line is. He used color to help the viewer see that the water has movement, and that same color creates the texture of the sand and the ripples in the water around the boat. On the other hand, the color of the clouds is a more pastel to show distance compared to the darker brown hues at the shoreline where the sand is located. The anchors and the light post can both be seen in like a rusty metal due to his deep concentration of the primary colors that would turn into a deep dark brown. Seurat also plays with line in three different areas of this work. The first obvious line is of course far away in the horizon where the water and the sky meet. Then we see the sandy shore across the bottom of the painting where it tells us that we're on land and the boat is not. Lastly, I notice another line at the top of the painting where he paints the clouds in light blues and pinks to show us the time of day. In this case, we can see that the sun is setting and it is just about dusk. This is a sense that there's like a fog rolling via a slight breeze that shifts from the left of the painting to the right and creates slight movement in the sails of the boat. His use of light is spectacular. We see the sun's weakening rays straight on coming towards us as the day ends. This light creates shadows in the sand from the light post and on the side of the boat that faces us. The light is also in a way ever expanding to the sides of the canvas. The sun's rays give an expansive effect that converts almost to like a big hug. This piece gives off a serene feeling at the end of a hurried day. This effect would not have been the same if he had painted it in a portrait format. His work is culturally significant because it teaches our eye to look deeper at the placement of color and to let the color blend itself. This second piece of artwork that I chose is Rocks and Pines by Paul Cézanne in 1897. This is also a post-impressionist oil on canvas painting like the previous one. Paul was born in the southern French town called Aix-en-Provence to a wealthy banker on January 19, 1839, and died at the age of 67. His father did not approve, but in 1867 he gave him a small allowance to go to study art in Paris. His work is described as demonstrating mastery of design, color, composition, and draftsmanship. His often repetitive, sensitive, and exploratory brushstrokes are highly characteristic and clearly recognizable. He used planes of color and small brushstrokes that build up to form complex fields, at once both a direct expression of the sensations of the observing eye and an abstraction of observed nature, according to paulcezanne.org. Most landscapes or nature paintings are painted in a horizontal landscape format, but here Paul chose to enclose our view by doing a portrait-style nature painting that limits our peripheral vision and makes us focus only on what is in front of us. When you see this painting, your eye only picks up on blues, greens, and browns, but upon closer viewing, I was able to see an unlimited variation of red and some yellows and even violets. These are primarily concentrated towards the bottom of the painting, therefore giving it a unique contrast to the lighter blue sky at the top. It also makes it bottom heavy. There's a sense of airiness with the use of the white behind the trees. You don't know if it represents clouds or the sun shining so bright on that side of the forest. In terms of line, Paul uses the height of the pine trees to show tall, reaching vertical lines that almost hide the blue sky, while at the same time he gives us a tiny glimpse between the center tree of a distant mountain horizontal line far, far away. This work shows us that nature can be so transforming. Whether we see it via landscape or portrait, the colors in the lines transport us to those fields and forests. It speaks to no matter how dark the pine forest can be, we're still able to catch glimpses of light between the trees. Paul shows us his use of light that begins at the top right of the painting and drops down to the bottom left. We can see this in the shadows on the left side of the rocks and also in the darker branches on the left side of the pine trees. Artsandculture.google writes that Cézanne laid in some areas of this piece characteristic parallel brushstrokes, while in other the brushstrokes appear looser and more rapidly applied. Stepping back, these varied marks coalesce into a shimmering effect that Cézanne called vibrations of light. I believe that this is what gives this piece a sense of true nature realism. This particular piece spoke to me because I saw the pines like an arrow pointing upwards, trying to take off, yet still being held down by the heavy rocks, almost like a teenager with ground rules.